My name is Lila Morgan, and last night I turned 18. The party had ended hours ago, but the air still felt thick with balloons and half-melted candles. Dad tugged me aside, voice low, eyes flicking to the guests as if someone might overhear. "Once this is over, you're going to sign some papers for Uncle Henry," he said, almost whispering. "It's just a formality." I nodded. I smiled. On the outside, calm. On the inside, a storm of suspicion. Then I stepped into the kitchen, opened my old laptop, and transferred every last penny from my grandparents into an irrevocable trust. My fingers hovered for a split second before hitting confirm. Done. Just in case. The next morning, Dad's face was pale. Mum's lips pressed thin. My brother Ethan blinked up at me like the world had shifted overnight. The cottage, the savings, every small investment. It was untouchable now. My Uncle Henry, already poised to sell property he didn't own, stormed off to call a lawyer. I stood in the hallway, sipping my coffee, watching the morning sun scrape gold across our living room floor. I felt the weight of it all, my quiet rebellion, my first taste of control. Years ago, I was 12. Grandpa Samuel picked me up in his battered pickup, the smell of diesel mixing with the scent of pine needles. We drove out to Maplewood Lake, a secluded place where the air smelled of wood smoke and something sweet I couldn't name. The cottage crouched behind a grove of towering oaks, a crooked porch and a screen door that never quite shut. A small fortress of memories waiting to be claimed. "Grab the other end," Grandpa said, lifting a splintered fence rail. I grabbed it, feeling the rough grain press into my palms. We worked through the morning, fixing rotted fence posts. Grandpa never hurried me. "Press your thumb here," he said, pointing to a knot in the wood. "If it gives, it's done. Don't fight it." Inside, Grandma Margaret had sandwiches and iced tea ready. The table itself, a slab of oak Grandpa had built, gleamed in the sunlight. That night, we sat on the porch, legs dangling, watching the lake swallow the sun in a slow, molten fade. "This cottage stays in the family," Grandpa murmured. "But family isn't always blood, Lila. Family is whoever shows up." I thought he was being poetic. I would understand later that he wasn't. Weekends became pilgrimages. Grandpa taught me the rhythm of repairs, roof leaks, shutters, pipes. Grandma showed me how colour could reshape a room, how books, arranged by hue, could make a house feel like a story. Every corner of that cottage was a secret they handed me, piece by piece. Back home in Riverside Heights, our house felt smaller in comparison. Ethan had the bigger bedroom, fresh paint, brand new furniture. My room smelled of old carpet and forgotten dreams. One dinner, Dad mentioned the cottage. "The property's losing value," he said, cutting into his steak. "We should sell it and reinvest." Mum nodded. "Makes sense." "Grandpa said the cottage stays in the family," I said quietly. Dad laughed, a sharp, dismissive edge. "You were 12, Lila. He was just being nice." Then we moved on, to awards, to schoolwork, to mundane chatter. I noticed a flyer later that night, glossy enough to burn my eyes. "Maplewood Developers, lakefront lots, premium prices." A number scribbled in the margin. Someone had already seen the money in our grandparents' home. 2 years later, Grandpa Samuel died. I was 14. At his funeral, Dad and Uncle Henry huddled near the dessert table, Henry clutching a folder like a weapon. "We need to act before probate gets messy," he whispered. Even at the funeral, they saw the cottage as a transaction. I stayed quiet. I didn't yet know that Grandpa had foreseen all of this, had planted the seeds for me to protect what mattered most. Grandma Margaret's death came 2 years after. She gripped my hand on her last visit. "The cottage is yours, Lila. Don't let them take it, promise me." Her grip was fierce, her eyes soft. At the kitchen table afterward, Dad spoke as if the world were balanced on a knife. "Now we can finally sort the property." That night, I heard him in the garage with Henry. "Let's get this moving." I realized then, Grandma's passing wasn't just a loss. To them, it was an opportunity. From 16 to 18, the cottage became my sanctuary and my rebellion. Every Saturday I drove there in my battered Honda, fixing screens, sweeping pine needles, repairing the worn weather stripping. The language at home shifted subtly. The cottage was no longer Grandpa's place. It was ours. Henry visited more often, folders under one arm, papers under the other. One night I spoke up. "Grandma wanted me to keep it," I said. Mum set down her fork. "Your grandma was emotional at the end. She kept saying, 'This is business.'" Business, the word that had replaced everything they once called family. By 17, Dad grew blunt. "When you turn 18, we'll settle it." The word family tasted bitter in his mouth. One afternoon, I found an envelope tucked behind old quilts. My name in Grandpa's handwriting. Inside, a card. "Margaret Hayes, attorney at law." Beneath her name, "Morgan Family Trust." My hands shook. Grandma had left me a trail. 3 months before my birthday, Margaret called. "We need to talk before your birthday." The days leading up to my 18th birthday were a strange mix of tension and normalcy. At home, Dad and Henry whispered in the garage, their voices low but urgent. I could hear papers shuffling, the faint scratch of pen on folder, the occasional sharp exhale. I sat in my room, pretending to read, my eyes flicking toward the door every few minutes. I was no longer a child, but I still had to pretend I didn't notice. One evening, as the sun bled red across Riverside Heights, I drove to Maplewood Lake. The cottage sat in perfect silence, the water reflecting the fiery sky. I walked across the porch, feeling the warped boards beneath my feet. The air smelled of pine, old books, and the faint perfume of memories. Each room held whispers of past laughter, of lessons, of secrets passed down. I remembered Grandpa's voice, calm, instructing me to look beyond the obvious, to see the patterns. That's what I had been doing for years, watching, learning, waiting. On the third night before my birthday, Henry cornered me in the driveway. He smiled like a salesman, the kind of grin that tries too hard to convince you. "The land alone is worth $450,000, he said. "Say yes, take $50,000 cash for college, and the rest is yours to walk away with." I laughed softly, almost to myself. I'm 18 in 2 days. I can wait. His smile faltered. You're young. It's a lot of money. Whose name is on the deed? I asked, stepping closer, voice calm. Your grandparents, he muttered. But they're gone. Ownership doesn't work that way, I said, eyes narrowing. For a moment I saw his facade crack. He didn't expect resistance. He didn't expect that I'd been learning everything quietly, carefully. That night I texted Margaret Hayes. They're accelerating. Her reply was immediate. I expected that. The following Saturday she explained the final details. Once you turn 18, she said, you legally become the successor beneficiary. As soon as you sign the paperwork, I'll file the notice at the county office first thing in the morning. Nobody will be able to sell the property. What if they try? They'll fail. I looked down at the papers. Should I confront my parents? Margaret removed her glasses slowly. Your grandfather wanted me to protect you, not negotiate. 9 days before my birthday, Dad announced a party. You only turn 18 once, he said, smiling. But I knew. I knew he was playing his role. Henry was plotting, and I was the only one who knew the trap that had been laid years ago by hands I trusted more than anyone else. The next morning I sat on the edge of my bed holding the signed trust papers. Margaret Hayes filed the legal notice at the county recorder's office. From that moment, anyone checking the title would see the truth. The Maplewood Lake cottage belonged to the trust, and I was the legal beneficiary. At 8:14 a.m., Margaret called me. It's done, she said. I sat quietly eating cereal. Dad and Henry came downstairs dressed for business. We'll be back by lunch, Dad said while grabbing his keys. I looked up calmly. Good luck. At 9:05, Henry handed his quick claim deed to the clerk. I can't record this document, she said. Excuse me? The property is owned by the Morgan family irrevocable trust. It's been for 6 years, the clerk added. Henry's face drained of color. You said this was simple, Dad said to him. I didn't know about the trust, Henry stammered. Over the next few weeks, everything fell apart. Ridgeline sued Henry. Investigations followed. Henry's license was suspended. Everyone in town knew the story. Dad eventually stopped fighting. Mum went back to work at the pharmacy. Silence filled our home. One evening, Ethan called. I don't understand everything, he said softly. But I'm sorry they hurt you. My throat tightened. Thanks, Ethan. In late April, I drove back to the cottage. The trees beside Maplewood Lake were blooming. I unlocked the door with the key Grandpa had given me years earlier. The cottage smelled the same. Pine, old books, sun-warmed wood. I walked through every room slowly. The kitchen table Grandpa built. Grandma's colourful bookshelves. The porch where we watched sunsets. Then I found another envelope in the desk drawer. My name in Grandpa's handwriting. Inside, a letter. I chose you because you asked if the roof needed fixing before you ever asked what the place was worth. Take care of it. It took care of you first. I sat on the porch for a long time after reading that. A week later, Margaret called. The legal notice can now be removed. The title is fully secure. Henry settled with Ridgeline by taking out a personal loan. The deal is dead, she added. Then one more thing. My grandparents had also created a separate college fund for me. $50,000. Now over $58,000 with interest. I closed my eyes. They had planned everything. Quietly, carefully, with love. That week, I enrolled at Riverside Community College. Environmental Science, minor in forestry. The cottage was only 20 minutes away. For the first time, I wrote the cottage's address under my home address. It finally felt true. A few days later, I asked Mum and Dad to meet me at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. I love both of you, I said quietly, but the cottage is not for sale. Not now, not ever. You threatened to throw me out. You searched through my bag. You tried to pressure me into giving away something Grandma trusted me to protect, I added. Dad whispered, I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix it today, I said. I'll call you Sunday. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. One Sunday in May, Ethan came to the cottage with pizza. We sat on the porch watching the lake. I didn't know about any of it, he said quietly. I know, I whispered. Was I part of the problem? You were a kid, Ethan. We both were. We watched the lake, peaceful for the first time in years. I realized my grandparents had given me more than property. They gave me security, love, and trust. And for the first time, I truly felt I belonged somewhere.